Our program, titled Hearts for Hearts, is a cardiovascular disease prevention program that will include educational meetings, healthy food presentations, physical activity sessions, and community activities. Our experimental group will also receive group therapy and group motivational sessions, whereas our control group will only receive the normal inclusions of the program and not the additional group therapy and motivational sessions. Our program is also only for African American women aged 20 to 45 with an increased risk of developing heart disease. We will gather our sample size from this population through a community setting. In order to compare our experimental and control groups, we will be taking our experimental group from a Baptist church in southern Jackson, Mississippi, and our control group from a northern Jackson, Mississippi Baptist church. This program will also be focused on primary prevention since it aims to prevent cardiovascular disease before it starts. Our program consists of 3 measurable objectives. The first is that the experimental group will reduce their onset of cardiovascular disease by 35% as measured at post-test through a self-administered questionnaire, questions 1 through 15. The second measurable objective is that the experimental group will have a 40% increase in attendance to the doctor's office due to a decrease in fearful attitudes towards healthcare professionals, which will be measured at post-test through a self-administered questionnaire, questions 1 through 10. The third and final measurable objective is that the experimental group will increase their knowledge of cardiovascular health by 50% as measured at post-test through a self-administered questionnaire, questions 1 through 13.
In attempt to reduce the onset of cardiovascular disease, our target population is African American women aged 20 to 45. They must live in Jackson, Mississippi, or other surrounding urban areas in the South, must have a BMI of 25 or higher, as well as must have a blood pressure of 140/90 or higher, or be diagnosed with hypertension. To effectively represent the population, a proper sampling and recruitment method must be done. For us, a probability-based sampling will be taken directly from the African American women in Jacksonville, Mississippi, aged 20 to 45 through cluster sampling. The cluster sampling allows our program to utilize one of the most important sectors of the Black American experience, the church. Samples will be taken from a variety of Baptist churches in Jacksonville, Mississippi, most likely differentiating the churches based on location as to prevent interaction biases. The churches selected will then be randomly sampled to either be in the control group or in the experimental group. The women selected who attend the experimental church will be placed in an experimental group, and for the same thing will occur for the controlled church and participating in that church.
Hello everybody, so moving on to our sample size. To begin off in defining what our type errors are, a type 1 error would be concluding that our program of heart-healthy mentorships through activities in churches is ineffective when in reality it fails. Our type 2 error would be concluding that our program of heart-healthy mentorships through activities in churches is ineffective when in reality it is effective. Now, how we got our sample size was starting off with determining our type 1 error. We determined that the significance would be 0.05 as our program is behavioral. Step 2, in determining our type 2 error, we calculated that as 0.8 as we multiplied the type 1 error by 4 and subtracted by 1, leaving us with 0.8. Step 3, with our effect sizes, our smallest effect size and relating to our objective was 35%, or in this case, this would be 0.35. Moving on to the next step, determining the minimum sample size. Since our effect size is 0.35, our type 1 error is 0.05, and our type 2 error is 0.8. Using the charts seen in the PowerPoints, we found that the sample size would be 100, and then using 20% of 100, which would be 20, we add 100 to 20, and that leaves us with 120. So for both the experimental and comparison groups, both groups would have to have around like 60 individuals to create a sample size of 120.
For our program, our experimental design will be a non-equivalent comparison group. The experimental and comparison group will be similar in demographics and located within the same city to ensure that they are as equal as possible. In order to address the threats to internal validity, we will ensure 6 things. Our program will not be implemented during the month of February, as that is American Heart Month. A similar comparison group with similar demographics to the experimental group, as well as a large sample size, will be utilized. We will encourage the program participants to stay true to what our program is teaching them and not to use outside sources to try and change their overall health. We will test for outliers to avoid skewing our results. We will not allow participants to self-select the group they are placed in, and we will offer meaningful incentives to all the participants once the program is completed. Moving on to operationalization of concepts, the data collection method we decided to use for our program is a self-administered questionnaire. The data collected consists of questions regarding personal health behaviors and knowledge. Therefore, a self-administered questionnaire will avoid interviewer effect if we were to do a face-to-face interview. Since participants are completing the questionnaire on their own, there's less judgmental attitudes resulting in more truthful answers. The self-administered approach also limits any influence of the correct answers in the interviewer's opinion. And since our program is aimed at adult women, the sample size is capable of assessing themselves responsibly and truthfully through a self-administered questionnaire. Our pre- and post-test instrument is based off the 4-point Likert scale that gives a range of answers from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Our demographics include age, measured at an interval, socioeconomic status at ordinal, religious affiliation at nominal, education at ordinal, income at ordinal, and location at nominal. Our first objective was a behavior objective, which measured the concept of reducing onset of cardiovascular disease, and we had 15 Likert scale questions, in which 8 were nominal, 6 were ordinal, and 1 were interval. Then we had an attitude objective, which measured the concept of attitude towards healthcare professionals, with 10 Likert scale questions, 6 being ordinal and 4 being nominal. Lastly, we had a knowledge objective, which measured the concept of improvement in knowledge of risks associated with cardiovascular disease. And that had 13 Likert scale questions, 7 ordinal, and 6 nominal.
Pilot testing for Hearts Mississippi will serve as some form of a baseline survey, as well as a brief introduction to the workings of our program. Pilot testing will begin months before the program begins. 3 to 5 Baptist churches in Jackson, Mississippi will be selected to participate. After Sunday church sessions are over, agreeing pastors will hand out surveys to those willing to participate in our program or pilot test, as well as attend 2 sessions of heart healthy education and 1 hour of physical activity for 2 weeks over each Saturday. The survey will consist of demographic questions, as well as questions pertaining to knowledge of heart disease, self-reported assessments of health, and the number of doctor visits, as well as a brief 3 to 5 questionnaire of perceived difficulty or the participant's ability to answer the questions. The 2 group sessions will be led by a physical activity coach. They will introduce participants to some information on heart disease, ways of prevention, and follow through with an hour-long session of heart-healthy exercise. A post-test will be conducted 1 week after the second session. As you can see, our pilot test is essentially a very reduced 3-week version of our program. We want to assess the needs of the community, gather working relations with local pastors and churches, and determine what questions need more work for the pre- and post-tests. Our next slide focuses on process evaluation, the monitoring of our program. The monitoring of our program is essential to ensuring that our target population is being met. As far as recruitment, this will be monitored via fidelity calls to make sure individuals meet demographic requirements and we are meeting our target population requirements. Calls will be made by staff volunteers shortly after participants exchange phone numbers at recruiting sessions. These recruiting sessions will either be done by program recruiters who venture out to local health fairs and attempt to rally interest to the program, or through sign-up sheets held at Sunday services and announced by the pastor. These calls will include the program volunteer explaining more about the purpose of our program and what participants will do, and asking the participants if they are still interested in being a part of the program. If the participant agrees to move forward, they will take part in a quick survey, answering demographic questions through the phone, confirming information about their age, race, their residency in Jackson, their availability, and their interest in participating in the program. After the completion of the demographic portion, an over-the-phone or in-person program consent form session will be scheduled. These fidelity calls ensure that all participants meet the demographic of our target population, since we are calling the individuals to confirm themselves that they match and meet these requirements. If initial recruitment efforts are not met, we will expand recruitment to more churches than the 2 prescribed that serve as the experimental and observational group. Methods we will use to monitor those who implement the program will include weekly staff meetings in which recruiters, fidelity callers, coaches, staff volunteers, and more will give updates on their experiences out on the field. They will talk about whether or not our program is meeting quota on sample size and or matching with people of our target population. We'll also talk about if participants seem to be responding well to the sessions or activities, and more. Staff meetings will be held at the local churches about once every week. After every intervention and our session is over, there will be a debrief between staff on what went right, what needs work on, and more. During sessions, there will be someone taking notes on a fidelity checklist sheet, keeping notice of participant reactions to the sessions, making note on what topics were discussed about, making note on participant questions brought up, and more. All files, online or physical, will be kept stored through shared Microsoft files and documents. Retention methods include role being taken during each intervention sessions. The head coach and guides of the sessions will confirm with participants 24 hours before each session on attendance through phone calls and or texts. If a participant is absent or can't make it on the day of the session, then the head coach will give a call after the session is over to learn of any reasons why they were missing. If time allows, participants and coaches can work to reschedule. Retention methods will be measured simply on rates of attendance from each participant. Participant satisfaction will be measured through the post-test. For the last few sets of questions, we'll ask participants on their varying opinions on the program. Some examples of questions include, do you feel this program helped you in any way? How satisfied are you with the program? How effective was the educational material?
In month 1 of our Hearts for Hearts program, our needs assessment will be completed and program development will start. In month 2, program development will be completed and pilot testing will be finished altogether. Sampling will also begin in this month. In month 3, sampling will be finished, the pre-test will be done altogether, and program implementation and process evaluation will begin. Program implementation will last from month 3 to month 6, and process evaluation will last from month 3 to month 7. In month 7, we will also finish our post-test altogether and start data analysis. In our final month, month 8, our data analysis and report writing will be finished altogether. Thank you for listening to our presentation.